Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing my January wrap-up because I read 7 books this month. I think in 2018 I averaged about 3 books a month, so 7 in the first month of 2019 is pretty great. January overall has been pretty great. I've been attacking my health goals, I've been attacking my reading goals, and I'm just killing it right now. So hopefully that continues on through the rest of the year, but we'll see. The first book that I read was Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and this is a YA fantasy set in the same world as the Remnant Chronicles or the Kiss of Deception series, whatever you want to call it. Do you have to read the Kiss of Deception series first? Probably not, but I will warn you that there's spoilers from the 3rd book in this book. So I actually had DNF'd the 3rd book because it was due back to the library, and so I never finished it, and then I was reading this and I was like, oh, now I know how that book ended. I guess I don't have to read it. But honestly, I liked this one better, but let me tell you what it's about first before I go into my little review. This book is dual point of view. The first point of view is from Jace. He has just become the new leader of his kingdom when his father passes away, and he's a little bit reluctant but also kind of excited for this role. He knows that it comes with a lot of responsibility. Then we have our other main character, Kazi, who is a street rat. She's poor, and she has recently come to start working for the Queen from the Kiss of Deception series. And the Queen sends her to go visit Jace and investigate him and possibly arrest him. These two characters kind of get stuck together, and the situation just snowballs out of control. And because they're stuck together, they kind of learn about each other and learn that their initial prejudices against each other maybe aren't fair. This book had 2 of my favorite tropes. It has enemies to lovers and it has a touch of fake dating. So if those are 2 tropes that you love, you would definitely enjoy this one. I gave this book 5 stars. It was very easy for me to rate it that high. I enjoyed it so much. Like I said, I liked it better than the Kiss of Deception series, and I think that's because the chemistry between these 2 characters was just so powerful and so real and just made me like smile as I was reading. I felt like Jace was really likable. So was Kazi, and she was really clever, and I never really knew what she was gonna do next. I will say though that I almost DNF'd the book. I got like 2 chapters in and the voices were kind of similar, and I was like, is Kazi a girl or a boy? I was kind of confused for the first chapter or 2. But I'm so glad that I picked it back up because I ended up being addicted to it and flying through the rest of the book. So just know if you start it, it is a little bit slow in the beginning. Overall, I would recommend this book. I do want to tell you though that book 2 doesn't come out until 2020, I think. So maybe get started on the Kiss of Deception series first, and then by the time you get to this one, the next book will be out. The second book that I read was actually for book club, and that was What Light by Jay Asher. Jay Asher is the same author that wrote 13 Reasons Why. This book was a YA contemporary, a romance, and a Christmas book. This book is about a girl named Sierra. Her family lives in California, but then every December they go up to Oregon and they run a Christmas tree farm that their family owns. Sierra meets this guy Caleb, and she really likes him. The problem is there's this rumor going around town that a few years ago Caleb did something very dangerous and a little disturbing. And so the main question that she's trying to figure out is, did he really do this? And if he did do it, can she still see him? Because the Caleb that she has come to know is very philanthropic, he's very sweet and kind, and so she's trying to reconcile the Caleb that she has met versus what everyone in town is saying. On top of that, the family farm isn't doing too great financially, so this may be their last year that they come to Oregon for December. So I gave this book 2 stars, and the reason for that is because it bothered me and it annoyed me so much. If I wasn't reading this for book club, I definitely would have DNF'd it. Part of me wonders if I didn't enjoy this book because I listened to the audiobook version of it, and I don't know, sometimes when I listen to audiobooks I don't get the same experience as I would if I read it, but something tells me I just still wouldn't have enjoyed it. Let's talk about some positive things that I liked about this book. I liked the family. It's Sierra, and then it's her mom and her dad. She's an only child. But it was nice to see a YA book where the parents are involved. They're present in her life and they have a good relationship. But that's probably the only thing that I actually enjoyed about this story. And the parents actually bothered me to a point as well. So even though they're present, they seem to care more about Sierra getting her heart broken at the end of the month because they're gonna obviously have to go back to California. So they're more worried about that than the fact that this guy Caleb is slightly dangerous. Like, they let her go off alone with this boy. I'm not a parent yet, but I know that I would be like, no, you have to hang out on the farm where I can watch you, or like, we have to meet him first. But no, it's just so weird, and it just didn't seem realistic. I kind of felt like the stakes weren't high enough because, yeah, she's going back to California, but they could be in a long distance relationship, or they could go to college near each other in the future. Like, they could take a train to see each other. There's Skyping, there's texting. Like, it just didn't seem like that big of a deal if they got together versus if they didn't get together. I think it was the first time in the history of all my reading where I read a contemporary book and I didn't want the main characters to end up together, which is just crazy because I love romance and I'm always rooting for them to end up together. So overall, I would not recommend this book, and I would say I wouldn't even get it out of the library. I just would not read it. It looks like I have a beard right now. So my battery just died and I had to charge it, but hopefully this is good to go now. The next book I read, I ended up actually finishing a trilogy. I started it like on a Monday and then I finished it like the following Friday. So I flew through it. Did I enjoy it? Yes. But with that being said, I had so many problems with this book that I just, in good conscience, could not rate it higher than a 2 or 3 stars. But I'll get into that. The series that I'm talking about is called Paper Princess. I think it's the Royals trilogy. I'm not sure if that's what it's called. Yeah, that's what it's called. This is a YA contemporary series, and it's written by Elle Kennedy and Jen Frederick, and their pen name is Erin Watt, which I didn't realize. I love Elle Kennedy so much. I've read a few of her books, and so I was a little bit like surprised when I saw that she was behind this one. I gave the first book 3 stars, the second book 2 stars, and the third book 2 stars. I'm only going to summarize the first book because I don't want to spoil anything. So in the first book, there's this girl named Ella. I think she's like 16 or 17 years old, and she's living with her mom. But when her mom passes away, she doesn't want to go into foster care, so she somehow avoids that, and she's just going to high school, but she's also stripping on the side to pay for like rent and stuff. And she's never known her dad or even known who he is. This man named Callum shows up and claims that he was her father's best friend. He says that her dad didn't even know that she existed until very recently before he passed away. And so now Callum wants to take Ella into his house and be like her legal guardian, and just do that because he was friends with her dad. So Callum whisks her away to his mansion where he lives, and Callum has 5 sons. The second oldest is like the ringleader of the group, and he does not like Ella. He doesn't want her to be there, so he kind of bullies her, and then everyone follows suit. And he also is kind of like the ringleader of the whole entire high school. And so when they see that he doesn't like her, the whole school kind of bullies her and is trying to get her to just leave because they think she's trash and they just don't want her there. This book had 3 romance tropes that I really like. It had enemies to lovers, forbidden romance, and 2 different worlds. So wealthy versus not wealthy. So what did I like about this book? I liked how easy it was to read, and I really liked Ella, the main character. She's really like snarky and funny, and she has a lot of good comebacks. As I mentioned, there's a lot of bullying that goes on, but she kind of just like meets it full force and gives it right back to them and just does not take their crap. She recognizes that this is a good opportunity for her to get a good education and to better her life. So even though her home life is terrible now, she's like, I just gotta stick it out for the next few years and then I'll go to college. And I don't know, I just really liked her as a character and wanted her to have a happy ending. Reed, on the other hand, who's the other main character, kind of bothered me a little bit. He was very, very typical alpha male, so if that's something you don't like, I would not even like look at this book. If you think that Edward Cullen and Christian Grey were here on the alpha male scale, then Reed was like up here. It was obnoxious almost. Most of the time when Reed was bullying her, it was just like him saying like, you should go home, we don't want you here type of thing. But there was one time that really bothered me, and I've never felt so uncomfortable reading a book except for Colleen Hoover's November 9. That's a whole other story. But this was a very close second of feeling uncomfortable. Reed barges into Ella's room. He doesn't even knock, he just comes in, and then I think he like, I'm pretty sure he threatens to rape her if she doesn't leave. Now you can see why I absolutely hate myself for even continuing this series and even giving it higher than a 1 or a 0 stars, because that's just not cool. Like, I just don't understand why somebody would write that. But the fact of the matter is, I read the series so quickly. I didn't want to give it a 5-star, but at the same time, I also didn't want to give it a 1-star, so that's kind of where we met in the middle there. But yeah, like, I could not get behind a lot of the things that Reed said and did. And that was one of the big ones. The villain in this book was also really cliche. It's the popular cheerleader, rich girl stereotype that we see. But I will say she had a very good arc over the whole series, and I enjoyed watching her and Ella fight. They just had a funny dynamic where they like almost respected each other because they were so similar, but then they also hated each other. Oh, and I also wrote a note that as the series goes on, it gets very soap opera-ish. Whenever you read a book, you have to suspend your disbelief to a certain amount, but this one, like, by the time you get to book 3, you're just like, this is just not realistic and just like a little bit too dramatic for me. My overall reaction would be just to proceed with caution if you're gonna read this book, and please don't hate me. The next book was actually a reread for me, and I ended up doing a full separate video. It started out as a reading vlog, but then it turned into a book discussion and kind of getting nerdy about writing craft and analyzing the book. So I won't say too much right now, but I'll tell you a little bit about the book. It's The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a YA fantasy, and I gave it 5 stars. So quick synopsis, this book starts out 10 years ago. Jude is living in the human world with her twin and then her older sister, and this man busts into their house and murders their parents, and they find out that her older sister is actually, I believe she's half fairy, while Jude and her twin sister Taryn are humans. And so this man is actually the older sister's dad. So he takes them to the fairy world to go live with them, and then the book fast forwards 10 years later, and Jude wants to become a knight in the court in this world. One of the princes, Prince Carden, doesn't want her there, and his friends don't want her there, and so they all kind of bully her to the extreme. Jude ends up making a deal with somebody and kind of goes on this adventure, and she really gets sucked into the political drama of this world because the king is stepping down from his position and handing off the crown to one of his sons. And so it's kind of definitely got a lot of political drama in the fairy world. Like I said, I don't really want to go into too much detail because I will be putting that other video up, but overall I'll just say this has a lot of twists and turns in it. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Even when I was rereading the book, I knew what was going to happen, and I was still holding my breath and just, you know, leaning forward, and I just could not stop reading. So I think that's a very good indication that this is great writing and great characters, great world building, all of that. So if you watched my 2019 bullet journal setup, in my reading spreads I had one where I was trying to have a goal of reading outside of what I normally read. So I think I had like thrillers, adult fiction, nonfiction. I had some different genre categories that I'm going to try to branch out and read more of. So this book that I picked up is a thriller, a mystery, and an adult fiction, so it kind of fits in a bunch of categories there. And that is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. In this book, there's a fictional cult horror film director, and I would kind of compare him to maybe like M. Night Shyamalan, but like even darker, to the point where the movies are like a little bit disturbing. So this film director, Cordova, he has not been seen in public for 30 years, and there's so much mystery surrounding this guy. And so when his daughter is found dead, everyone says it was suicide. But our main character, Scott, does not think so. Scott McGrath is a journalist, and he actually was trying to break a story on this film director many years ago, and his life kind of, as a result, fell apart. He lost his marriage, and he lost his career. And so when the news comes out that Ashley committed suicide, Scott is like, that doesn't sound right. Like, some of the things that he had unearthed in his previous research makes him believe that maybe there's more to this story than meets the eye. As he starts to solve some clues and some mysteries, he kind of forms this ragtag team of people to help him solve the rest of the mysteries and learn what really happened to Ashley. This book felt like if you took The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and you mixed it with Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, that's what it felt like. It felt like a combination of the two, because we have the journalist who's trying to kind of redeem himself and his career and becomes obsessed with a case. I don't really want to say why it was like Dark Places, but you can probably guess if you've read that book. One thing I really liked is that this book had newspaper clippings, it had websites, just like all the stuff that the journalist was uncovering. So I would definitely read the physical book rather than listening to audiobook if you have the choice. I kind of went back and forth between do I want to give this 4 stars or 5 stars because the ending kind of annoyed me a little bit, but at the same time I understood why the author chose that ending, and so I didn't want to fault it for that. And I think overall there were so many clues and so many twists and turns that it really was like a work of art and was just a really great mystery. And so I had to give it 5 stars in the end. When I watch and read mysteries, I like to be able to solve the clues. I hate when you get to the end of the book and the murderer was somebody that we weren't even introduced to. Luckily, this is not like that. The author gives you all of the clues and you're able to kind of figure things out as the character is. And I just really like that because it always makes me feel really smart and makes me feel like I'm like going on the adventure with the journalist. I remember when I first started reading this, Andrew asked me if I was enjoying it, and I was like, you know, this is why I don't read adult fiction, because there's so much description and it's unnecessary, and this is like a 600-page book and it doesn't need to be that long. Well, let me tell you, all of the description is relevant and you need to pay attention from page 1. Yes, there are red herrings and false clues and false information. Like, there's so much description in this book, but there is relevant information also within the first act of the book. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, and it became so much more interesting. This one, like I was kind of saying, this one starts out a little bit slow, but once the mystery kind of takes off, it gets so good. It was such a page turner that I read like the 3rd act in like a day or 2. I just couldn't put it down because I needed to know how it ended. I really hope that Netflix makes this into a movie because I think it would be a really good movie. So overall, I would say if you like mysteries, if you like thrillers, you should definitely pick up this book. So that's it. Those were the 7 books that I read this month, and let me know if you've read any of them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.